Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Startup Boston podcast, where I interview founders, investors, and influencers in the Boston startup community to uncover actionable advice and stories from their experiences. I'm your host, Nick Dupuis. This is the 25th episode of the podcast and features an interview with Rory Crawford, co-founder and CEO of BevSpot. BevSpot provides bar management software for the hospitality industry, allowing restaurants and bars to monitor and order inventory an average of 3 times faster. They provide visualizations to help identify trends in usage, inventory, profitability, sales, and variance, empowering bar and restaurant owners to save thousands every month in sitting inventory and poor costs. In today's episode, a few things Rory talks about are why building out a prototype allowed him to stand out and attract co-founders, the biggest trends happening in the bar and restaurant industry, why they wanted to make BevSpot a SaaS product, and what has been keeping the hospitality industry from adopting data-driven decision-making tools. If you like today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you can get all the new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And as always, you can find today's show notes at startupbostonpodcast.com, and you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com. Enjoy today's episode. Rory, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nick.
I want to start I like the story of how you came up with the idea for BevSpot. So can you start with that and tell us how you came with that idea?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my background was all in technology, finance, and then investing. So I was really a finance guy by background. And then very serendipitously, I was having actually, honestly, a beer with a good friend of mine who was very entrepreneurial and technical, as an engineering background. And we're just thinking about ideas for businesses that could work. And we were trying to think through large markets with the potential to create value with technology that didn't seem to be happening. And we thought about the alcohol space and the wine space. And it's pretty funny, but I went home that night after kind of having great discussion, thinking that was it. It was just a topic of conversation. And I got a text message from my friend the next morning saying, "Hey, I couldn't sleep last night. I've been thinking about this idea. We have to do it." And I was not entrepreneurial, so I didn't think about that at all. But I said, hey, why not? I'll learn something. And we started working on that project nights and weekends for fun. And that introduced me into the industry where, I kind of showed up and realized that everything, to my knowledge, everything that I experienced was being done offline and in pen and paper. And it just amazed me that such a large industry with so many people operating as though there was no software out there. And it was all on pen and paper and Excel. And that's really where the idea for BevSpot came, to deliver great software for a very large industry to help people in a way that was amazing to me that didn't exist.
What was the original idea? Was it to do exactly what you're doing today, or did you end up shifting over time?
Yeah, absolutely ended up shifting over time. I think as almost every business probably does to some extent. But at the highest level, the idea has stayed the same, which was to build a world-class technology company for the beverage industry. Now, that was, clearly the goal from the start. And, the way in which we thought about executing on that has changed over time via, focusing on distributors versus focusing on retailers, how the product has evolved over time. But in the earliest instance, it's really just an idea at the highest level. And the way in which you execute on that idea really becomes your product and your market strategy, which has certainly changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Now, tell me if this story is right. So you wanted to make a prototype for BevSpot. And so you went into basically a basement at HBS, right, for 2 weeks.
Yep. And
built out, at the time you didn't know how to code. Yep. And you built out a working prototype of sorts for the beginning of what BevSpot was.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a pretty funny story. It's so at the earliest stages, you have an idea, you're trying to make progress, you're trying to create momentum. And I got to a point where the next stage of progress for me would be to have a prototype. All the while, I was trying to recruit technical co-founders. I wanted technical co-founders to build a great technology company. The problem is no technical people want to talk to a business person with an idea. It's impossible to talk with them. I was networking through MIT and Harvard, and nobody wants to talk to me. So at some point, you have to figure out how to make progress yourself. So I said, well, if I can't find anybody to build it for me, how fast can I figure out if I can build it myself? So I said, well, I don't know if this is going to work or not, in the same way that the first project, we didn't really know if it was going to work or not. I said, I'm going to give it 2 weeks. I'm going to work really hard and see if I can build it myself. And I'm going to learn something from that. And I'm going to try to make progress. So I did a weekend boot camp, which was like 18 hours a day for a couple days to get very basic engineering or very basic application building experience. And then I skipped a bunch of class at HBS and locked myself in the stacks in the basement, the stacks as they're called, and just did tutorials, did Code Academy Python tutorials, did Django tutorials, did HTML, CSS tutorials, and just spent hundreds of hours over the course of a couple of weeks trying to figure out how to code, and then built a very, very, very basic prototype, which was essentially an application with a few different static views that you could actually click through. That would be a prototype of what the product could look like. And then ultimately, randomly enough, that is actually what got me introduced to my co-founders, because I finally... I learned a couple things through the prototyping process, the most important of which was that I'd never build anything of value. I'm not an engineer, and it was very hard for me to build something very basic, and I realized that was never going to work over time. So that was the first lesson. The second lesson is, I used that and sent out a message to about 30 different MIT computer science majors saying that I'd built a prototype. And ultimately, that garnered responses because it separated me from most business people who wouldn't take the time to do that. And that's ultimately how I got connected with my co-founders.
Yeah, I remember reading that your co-founder said that the only reason he responded to you was because you had that prototype.
Yeah.
That's what, like you said, set you apart from everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I haven't written a single line of code since, but I'm so thankful every single day that I did write that, build that prototype and take the time to invest. I mean, that was a massive amount of time. People thought I was crazy, obviously. My wife thought I was crazy. It was so painful, but, looking back on it, it's funny how things work. I'm not an engineer. I didn't need to build anything since, but it's ultimately what got him to respond and ultimately what got this thing started.
Do you think that all founders, even if they're non-technical, should have even just like a little background or a small knowledge in that space?
I do. I think it can't hurt. I think in this day and age, especially if you're trying to build a web-based software company, I think it's extremely valuable to understand the basic building blocks of a web application. And I think the experience that I had, and I think you can do it in a couple weeks. I mean, you can do it in 2 to 3 weeks if you really want to put yourself through some pain. It was extremely helpful. It was helpful for me in doing a couple things. One is in understanding how to screen for good technical co-founders. So I was kind of smart enough to understand what were good languages, what were good frameworks, good questions to ask, and how to avoid potentially bad co-founders. Mm-hmm. But then I think even throughout our relationship, since starting working on the company, I think it's helped me in understanding them and understanding how we can build things quickly and how it all works together. As a company gets bigger and we get more into architectural considerations and things, it kind of goes away. But I think it was a very, very valuable experience and, helps me to this day communicate with that side of the company.
So share with me now and the listeners with what BevSpot is, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we provide web-based software to the hospitality industry, essentially bars, restaurants, hotel chains, anywhere where alcohol is being managed and sold to customers on the premise. So we don't work with grocery stores or liquor stores, but we work with bars, restaurants predominantly. And what we're doing is we provide them mobile web-based software that allows them to manage their entire beverage business in our application. So the way it works is they're conducting physical inventory counts of all of the wine, spirit, or beer that sits at their establishment in the storage room and behind bar and all the different locations. They're conducting those physical inventory counts on their mobile device, any mobile device. When they're done with their counts, they have a full picture of exactly how much product they're sitting on, the value of it, where it sits, and they're able to actually auto-generate orders to be communicated out to all of their vendors to replenish inventories. The average bar or restaurant places an order every single week and is stocking product every week to sell to consumers. So we allow them to automate that process based on their inventory levels and then actually directly through our application communicate those orders to their vendors. So now they've aggregated all their orders in a digital archive in our system. So now we have all of their inventory data, we have all of their ordering data, we can show them analytics on top of that information. So what's the fastest moving product? How much did you have last week versus this week? Where are there opportunities to improve? And then the final piece is we actually allow them to import their sales data directly from their point of sale system. So we're able to give them full end-to-end ordering and invoicing, inventory, and sales information on their beverage business to help them identify things that are working well and things that are potentially not working well by focusing their attention on profitability by product, loss by product, other kind of elements of a complicated program that was historically being done on pen and paper inventory, phone call orders, and POS sales data, which is inaccessible. And we allow them to do all of this in an easy-to-use web-based application, which provides them a system of record for all of that information, but also analytics and insights and visualizations on top of that data to help them make decisions going forward to run a better program.
So there's no physical hardware that's needed on their end? No,
exactly. There's no physical hardware. We've specifically and strategically stayed away from hardware. So there's no hardware. It's all web-based. It's, which is nice because it's agnostic to device. There's no native application that you have to download. There's also no specific integrations that we've built. We enable our customers to work with our software no matter what point of sale system they use, no matter what devices they have in their pocket, no matter who they order from, no matter what product they manage. It's all agnostic and available to the customer based on, our web-based application.
What drove the decision to make it like a SaaS-based product?
The cloud, web-based software, flexibility, the ability to very rapidly update the software without having to, force customers to update on their end, client side. All of these were really the elements. I think if you look at the world generally, I think moving to the cloud is happening increasingly in various verticals, and the ability to build a web-based system that enables us to rapidly iterate and rapidly innovate on our product to deliver greater value to our customer base, while also enabling us to aggregate digital data inside of one system of record across all of our accounts, and then actually utilize that data to deliver insights on the industry as a whole to our customers to make them more effective and successful, but also to help deliver value to other parties in the industry. So really making sure that all of our, and that's kind of core to the web-based system as well, is that we host all of the data in one application or in one kind of database where we're able to then run analytics on top of that, which are industry-wide. And that's ultimately our long-term goal as a business, is to not just provide world-class software to the industry to help them conduct existing processes and things, but actually aggregate digital data in a format that does not exist today so that we can become the single source of truth for real-time product information globally. And that kind of comes because of our, the standard architecture in which we've constructed a web application that enables all of our accounts to contribute to that single source of data.
What do you think has been stopping the hospitality industry from adopting these types of data-driven decision-making tools?
In beverage, there are some elements that I think have slowed innovation down. I think one is the nature of the industry. It is a regulated industry. So regulation can oftentimes create barriers to entry for technology businesses. Another one is it is not a sexy industry. Hospitality, back of house hospitality is not something that people think about very often. It's about trucks, distribution. It's about supply chain. So it's an industry that's very, very rarely thought of. I think that helps. It's also an industry that I think is generally very challenging just as a whole. I think the hospitality industry has very high bankruptcy rates. It's a very competitive industry. It's a very challenging industry. And I think a lot of software providers or technology businesses shy away from industries like that because it creates barriers to effectively selling and effectively scaling when you're selling to a small customer base that has its own challenges. All of those things, to me, back in the day and today, represent incredible opportunity because, the more complicated the business of your customer, the more value you can potentially create. The more antiquated their existing systems, the more value you can create. The more regulatory or not really regulatory, but the more kind of headwinds that other companies would face in effectively delivering on that value, the more defensibility you can potentially create. So these are all the things that got us excited about the opportunity. But I think they also feed into why the transition to web-based software has not been as quick for this industry as a lot of other industries.
How many customers do you have now?
I think we're about 500 customers.
What has allowed you to scale so quickly?
Yeah, and it's actually interesting. If you think about our customer base, we've probably gone from about 100 customers to 500 in the last 9 months. So the vast majority of that growth has happened, much more quickly. So I think what's enabled us to grow so quickly, I think trying to stay flexible. I think making sure that we're focused on delivering one code base, one application that is valuable to all of our customers. I think we've been thoughtful in strategically avoiding direct integrations, strategically avoiding any single investment from a technical or a company perspective that takes significant amounts of time. We've really tried to build a piece of software that's very valuable to the entire industry. And then we've tried to build a sales model and a marketing model that enables us to touch as many accounts as possible very quickly and then deliver on that value. So if you think about everything that we think about as a company, it's all built around scale. How do we scale quickly? And how do we maximize the return on our investment from a people perspective, a business perspective, and do so rapidly, because our goal as a business is to scale as quickly as possible so that we can help as many businesses in the industry as possible, but also so that we can access and aggregate greater amounts of data that can deliver greater value to our customers.
What are some things that you've learned from your customers that have allowed you to build a better product?
And this is another kind of great point I think I didn't really mention, but I think the other thing that's helped us scale quickly is very close relationships with our customers. So we spend historically, my co-founders and I spend a lot of time directly with our customers. We still speak constantly with our customers and potential customers. So I think the things that we've learned from them are, there's a fear of change. There's a fear of technology adoption generally in this industry. I think it's a function of general inertia. I mean, the industry operates today, for the most part, without this type of software. There's also, unfortunately, a lot of bad software in the industry, a lot of legacy software, hardware, software, integrated systems, on-premise, clunky, 10, 20, 30-year-old systems. So a lot of this industry has experienced very bad software. When you come in trying to help their business with software that feels and looks a lot more like Facebook or Twitter, it's hard for them to overcome thinking about that thing they bought 20 years ago, which has, been a big pain for them.
Yeah.
So that's something we've learned. I think we've really learned how to understand the fears and the considerations and concerns of our customer base, because this is the first time that they're adopting software. It's a leap of faith to some extent for them in doing so. This has also taught us another great lesson, which is, really focusing on service alongside software. In a perfect world, you have web-based software that delivers great value to every single customer. When you're trying to help an industry move towards that model, I think really recognizing and learning from them that there is a level of service that's required to facilitate the transition in a manner that is effective for them is really important, and something we've certainly learned from them as well.
So if a customer is reluctant to try you because of the experience they've had with other softwares in the past, how do you go about convincing them that you're different and that you're a better product?
Yeah, so we do it a couple different ways. I think one is we really try to very quickly separate ourselves and differentiate ourselves based on our core DNA. So a couple very simple objective things. I think if you look at the co-founders, Facebook, Amazon, technical background, that's not like the industry. If you look at the rate of growth, that's not really like the industry. Most of these companies have been, flat or stagnant or been in the industry for a long time. If you look at our investor base, having a great investor like a Bain Capital Ventures, having raised just under $20 million in 18 months or 20 months, these things just aren't normal in the industry. So I think really trying to communicate that to our customer base or the potential customer base. And then finally, I think we've also tried to facilitate it to reduce friction and enable ourselves to work with them by reducing barriers to an engagement. We do things like money back guarantees oftentimes, where we'll say, hey, we're not here to take your money if you don't love the product. All we want is an opportunity to show you a better way. And if we don't deliver on that, we're not interested in taking your money anyway. We don't do, for the most part, oftentimes, especially with smaller accounts, we don't do annual contracts. We try to really put ourselves in a position to facilitate their flexibility. So we really try to come off as a very different type of company. We also deliver a lot of, free services, free onboarding, free support historically, to really try to overcome that type of inertia in working together. And those are the ways that we try to, really help them understand that, we truly do just want an opportunity to show them a different way. We think we're different. We believe we're different. And the best way to do that is to demonstrate it through a working relationship.
How do you see the hospitality industry changing over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it'll certainly move to the cloud. There are a lot of legacy systems in the industry today, which are on-premise. These are the things that we get excited about competing against. A lot of it is on-premise. I think it has to move to the cloud. If you have a restaurant group that can't access real-time group-level information, that's not going to scale. That has to change. I think increasing, so you're looking at more applications to help their businesses. I think another element is I think data will become increasingly important to the way in which they make decisions. We find this all the time when we work with a customer and we take them from pen and paper into BevSpot. It's amazing to see their reaction to the information they can now very quickly and easily access and the way in which they make decisions off it. Very difficult to make decisions. Insights and don't jump off a piece of paper with 500 rows and a whole bunch of numbers. Mm-hmm. But when you put it in a digital format and you layer on top of it visualizations that focus their attention on the critical indicators of success or failure for those products, it's amazing what they do. I think that's going to be a trend that we're going to increasingly see in the industry, both from an individual retailer perspective, an individual hospitality business perspective, where they're actually utilizing their own data to make decisions. But I think also as a whole, as an industry, I think the industry will start to look towards data to help make decisions, whether it be on product trends nationally, globally, regionally. They'll start to look for more data to help them stay on top of ever changing, and I think more rapidly changing consumer preferences. That's another thing that has been happening and I think will continue to happen. If you look inside of the beer space, for instance, there's been a massive proliferation of craft beer. Craft beer 20, 30 years ago was a sub 1% of the market. Today, it's over 20, 25%. That's not going away. I think consumers are more and more interested in specialized product. And if you think about the entire hospitality industry, that creates a lot of pressure on traditional businesses because whether you're making traditional product like Budweiser or Miller, you can no longer do that and be as effective as you were historically. If you're a restaurant and you're trying to cater to your consumers and deliver great hospitality experience, you have to be on top of changing preferences because you have to be changing. This is, it manifests in all sorts of ways, both from a supplier perspective and the way in which they think about product and the way they buy product or buy brands, but also from a consumer perspective, you're seeing increasing complexity in cocktail menus. Beverage programs, you're seeing increasing focus on craft. You're seeing more turnover in their products. All of these things are putting pressure on the hospitality industry generally to leverage data to make sure that they're putting the right product in front of consumers who are in a much different than they were 20, 30 years ago.
I want to move now into our rapid fire questions.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question is, what's a startup in Boston that you're most excited about?
Startup in Boston, I'm most excited about. I love the guys at Catalant. Yeah,
Rob.
The old hourly nerd guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Rob. I think Rob, Pat, Pete. They're all really, really impressive people, and it's been amazing to watch their success. And they've been mentors to me because they were 1 year ahead of me at HBS. They were extremely helpful. But I'm excited about them.
What's something about you that most people don't know?
Oh, here's a great thing. I have a twin sister. And I'm having twins.
I have a twin sister also.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Good man.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a twin and I'm having twins.
And you're having twins.
And I'm having twins. Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
What are some of your favorite tools that help make your work and life easier?
Tools. Email. Email is great. Email and my iPhone. Those are probably the two biggest things. I live off of those things.
What are some of your favorite blogs or books?
Blogs or books. I love SaaStr. Is a great blog. I think that's about as good as it gets. Books, I'm a big autobiography or biography guy. So my favorite book is the Autobiography of Martin Luther King. Then you got a biography on Winston Churchill, and then Einstein, and then Benjamin Franklin. Those are the four favorite ones. Yeah.
So it's Friday here. It's almost 5 o'clock. You go to a bar. What do you order?
And I'm not gonna lie, it kind of changes on preferences. I'm a big fan of the way you feel is what you should drink. So. Mm-hmm. Depending on the feel, I love on a Friday, especially a Friday after a long week. I love a Grey Goose martini. That's my favorite probably drink. A little later, I'm also a big Scotch guy, so single malt Scotch. I love that. But I love mezcal. I love great cocktail programs. I can't get away from trying what they're making. A lot of whiskey and mezcal and tequila cocktails. I'm not much of a gin or a rum or a vodka cocktail person unless it's a vodka martini.
What's your favorite bar?
It's a little tough to say, but because there used to be a person that worked there that I was close with who's moved now. So, but I still love the bar. Number 9 Park. I absolutely love the bar and the bar program at Number 9 Park.
Where's that?
It's Number 9 Park Street. So it's catty corner to, I guess, the Capitol building right there.
Okay.
On the park.
Okay.
It's awesome. You got to check it out. It's
I will check it out.
Great. World-class food, world-class beverage program. Absolutely fantastic.
What advice would you give to your 20-year-old self?
I'd say have fun. Enjoy the ride. It's amazing to look back. I'm 29 now. I think I'm 20. Yeah, 29 now. It's been a crazy 9 years. I'm very, very fortunate. Been absolutely blessed in so many ways. And just to make sure, I would remind myself to enjoy the ride and have a lot of fun while working as hard as I have.
Just a few final questions here to close out. Where can people find out more about BevSpot?
Yeah, so www.bevspot.com, the best place. We have an incredible blog. With all sorts of industry-related information, but also startup information and otherwise. So we try to be pretty transparent on that. So I'd say bevspot.com, and then you'll find there links to our blog and a bunch of other content about us.
And where can people connect with you online?
Yeah, I think the best way is, there's contact at BevSpot. So there's email addresses on the website. That's probably the best bet. I'm also on Twitter and probably a great way to connect with me as well. So seek me out, shoot me a note.
Final question is, do you have any parting thoughts, advice, or suggestions for the audience?
I think entrepreneurship is an incredibly exciting thing. I've never done anything that has been so rewarding, and it's a lot of fun, but it's incredibly challenging. And I would just say, especially looking back on all of the support and benefits and I had, is just find mentors. keep doing it, push, and keep making progress. And if you do that, it's incredibly fulfilling and rewarding, and keep doing it.
Well, and there, Rory, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
If you liked today's episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. You'll get all my new episodes as soon as they're released right on your podcast app. And if you really liked today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you could write a review of the podcast as well. Just go to startupbostonpodcast.com/iTunes. And remember, you can find all show notes with links at startupbostonpodcast.com. Until next time, if you have any feedback, ideas for guests, or just want to say hi, you can reach me at nic@startupbostonpodcast.com or reach out on Twitter at startupbosscast. That's startup BOS cast. Cheers.